Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now this is where things get interesting. Jayapal didn't walk into that hearing quietly. She came in fully charged, sticking to a very familiar playbook. You could see it from the start: strong tone, sharp delivery, and that classic gotcha setup, like she was moments away from cornering her opponent on national TV. It was loud, it was emotional, and it was clearly designed to grab headlines. But here's the twist. She didn't just run into any opponent. She walked straight into Marco Rubio, and that changed everything. What was supposed to be a high-impact takedown quickly started shifting in the other direction. The energy she brought, the framing she relied on, it didn't land the way it usually does. Instead of backing up or getting pulled into the emotional momentum, Rubio held his ground and flipped the dynamic entirely. And just like that, the exchange stopped looking like a setup and started looking like a shutdown. What you're about to see isn't just another political clash. It's a moment where strategy meets resistance, and only one of them manages to stay in control.
Where in the Constitution does it say that the Secretary of State can override the First Amendment protections of free speech? Is there a footnote that I missed somewhere?
There's no constitutional right to a student visa. There's a statute that says the Secretary of State gets to determine whether someone is a threat. We deny visas every day all over the world.
Do you think that the
I will continue to revoke the visas of these people that come here to tear this country apart.
You said that, Mr. Secretary. Let me reclaim my time because of a student visa for Pramila Jayapal, a Turkish citizen who is a graduate student at Tufts University, apparently simply for writing an op-ed. According to an internal State Department memo, you took this action under your discretionary authority to revoke visas, and soon after you revoked her visa, armed and masked plainclothes officers snatched Ms. Ozturk off the street and transported her to a prison in Louisiana. Mr. Secretary, do you really think that Ms. Ozturk's op-ed results in a foreign policy consequence?
I believe that case involves someone whose visa we never would have granted had we known ahead of time.
I'm not asking you that question. I'm asking you if you think an op-ed, but that's exactly, in fact, what happened. The State Department wrote a memo concluding that you did not have sufficient grounds to revoke Ms. Ozturk's visa. There was no evidence showing that she'd engaged in any activities were a threat to national security. And in fact, in May, a federal court ordered Ms. Ozturk's release from detention, noting that the sole basis for the government's detention appeared to be the fact that she co-authored this opinion piece in the Tufts newspaper in March of 2024. Where in the Constitution does it say that the Secretary of State can override the First Amendment protections of free speech? Is there a footnote that I missed somewhere?
There's no constitutional right to a student visa.
But is there a constitutional right? Does it say somewhere that Marco Rubio gets to determine which speech is appropriate and revoke student visas based on what you think constitutes free speech?
There's a statute that says the Secretary of State gets to determine whether someone is a threat. We deny visas every day all over the world.
Do you think that the Immigration and Nationality Act trumps the Constitution of the United States, Mr. Secretary?
Well, Congress can always change the law if you want, but I'm telling you,
Mr. Secretary,
while I have the authority, I will continue to revoke the visas of these people that come here to tear this country apart.
You said that, Mr. Secretary. Let me reclaim my time because you are talking about revoking student visas based on what somebody says. And that means that you are trumping the legal Supreme Court, the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution of the United States.
No one has a right to a student visa.
Mr. Rubio, why did the administration need to use masked, armed, unidentified agents to whisk somebody off the street and deny her counsel for almost 24 hours after her arrest?
Well, you'll have to ask the agencies that did that work. I'm not responsible. I'm responsible for revoking the visas of these people that come to tear this country apart.
I'm talking about this particular case where you revoked the student visa of a Turkish citizen who was a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that you didn't like. And suddenly you allowed for masked men to whisk her off the street. And you have multiple jobs, apparently. You're the national security advisor as well. So don't tell me it's not your job who snatches her off the street.
We don't do the snatching, but I can tell you we do the visa revocations.
Let me ask you about the national security consequences of people, masked men on the streets, snatching people off the streets. If these are legitimate law enforcement agents carrying out proper arrests, why are they hiding their identities?
because then radical crazies will try to hurt them.
So you think that U.S. agents who have almost always gone without face coverings, even when they're arresting some of the country's most dangerous criminals, suddenly have so much to fear from a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that they need to be masked? Is that
that law student was a guest in the United States on a student visa. No one's entitled to a student visa.
So you revoked her student visa based on an op-ed which trumps the Supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
Someone's coming up here to stir up problems on our campus. We're going to revoke their visa.
She didn't do any of that. She wrote an op-ed.
Well,
she wrote an op-ed, and I'm talking to you about her particular case.
Claims and your claims. Those are not the facts.
You reclaiming my time. You revoked her student visa because she wrote an op-ed.
Would you revoke? We're going to do more.
I have another question for you. Would you revoke the visa of someone in the United States who published claims that, quote, Jews are an untrustworthy and dangerous group? Yes or no?
We will revoke the visa of anyone who's in this country as a guest who's here to stir up trouble.
Are you going to revoke the visa of somebody who made that?
In the case, I'll look at it. I'm looking to get crazy people.
Actually, it's not just about revoking. You actually, Secretary Rubio, excuse me, reclaiming my time. Can you explain to me why the Trump administration granted refugee status to Charles Kleinhaus, the white Afrikaner who tweeted that exact statement that I just said? There's the case.
That's not a visa.
You granted that person to enter the United States.
That's someone that applied here through a totally different process.
Secretary Rubio,
visas are a privilege.
Secretary
we deny them all the time, and we'll revoke
revoked a visa based on an op-ed, and then you allowed for masked men to snatch somebody off the street.
Your time is expired. That's your claim.
Here's what the viral clips don't show. Jayapal leaned heavily on emotional framing, talking about masked agents and free speech to shape how people feel about the situation. Her argument was that this kind of enforcement could silence public expression. Rubio didn't engage with that. He kept it strictly legal. A student visa isn't a constitutional right, it's a privilege. So protected speech doesn't automatically protect immigration status. And that's the clash, emotion versus legal authority. So what matters more here, the law or how it's enforced? Let me know.